Welcome to Mrs. Bowles and Mr. Eckerman's review for Chapter 16, Age of Exploration and Expansion. Today we will be looking at Section 16.4. 16.4, The Foundations of European Exploration. Main idea. Spain created an empire in the Americas, while the Dutch set up trading colonies in Asia and the Americas. Politics of Spanish colonies. Viceroys were Spanish officials who represented the monarchy in Spain's colonial empire. Ponce de Leon traveled with Columbus on his second voyage. He stayed in the Caribbean islands when Columbus returned to Spain. As a reward for his service to Spain, he was given the right to find Bimini, one of the islands in the Bahamas. Legend told of a spring that cured old age, a fountain of youth, located on Bimini. Ponce de Leon set out to find the fountain in March of 1513. He landed near what is now St. Augustine, Florida. He thought he had landed on an island and named it Florida, after the many flowers he saw blooming. He claimed Florida for Spain and returned to Spain. 5 years later, Ponce de Leon returned to Florida with 2 ships and 200 men. They were met by a large group of Native Americans who fought the invaders. Ponce de Leon was hit by an arrow. He was taken back to Cuba and died from the wounds in 1521. In 1519, with 11 ships and about 600 men, Hernán Cortés invaded Mexico. He seized the Aztec ruler Montezuma II. Cortés captured and destroyed the great Aztec city of Tenochtitlan. The Spanish later built a Mexico City on its ruins. Spanish horses and guns, unknown in the Americas, helped the Spanish defeat the great Aztec armies, as did a smallpox epidemic that swept through the Aztecs. This route shows the overland route of Cortés in 1519 across the Yucatan Peninsula. Montezuma II, from 1466 to 1520. Aztec ruler Montezuma II became the ruler of the vast Aztec Empire in present-day Mexico in 1502. In 1519, the Spanish explorer Hernán Cortés invaded the country. Although Montezuma was uncertain whether to welcome Cortés, he ultimately did so, showering Cortés with precious gifts upon the Spaniards' arrival. By some accounts, some Aztecs believed that Cortés was the god king Quetzalcoatl, due to return to the Aztecs at the time Cortés arrived. Fearing that the elaborate welcome was a trap, Cortés took Montezuma hostage. Because Montezuma was relatively submissive to the Spanish authorities, he lost the respect of his people. When revolt broke out in 1520, the Spaniards forced Montezuma to speak to the rebels. However, the rioting crowds instead stoned Montezuma, and he died 3 days later. The Spanish also found rich civilizations in South America. In 1530, Francisco Pizarro led 180 men and 37 horses on an expedition. They traveled from the Isthmus of Panama to the capital of the Inca Empire in what is now Peru. In 1533, Pizarro claimed the land from present-day Ecuador to Chile for Spain. Charles was a member of the Habsburgs, an old German family. Charles took the Spanish throne in 1516 at age 19. 3 years later, he was elected Holy Roman Emperor. Recall that Charles V had dealings with Martin Luther during the Reformation when he opposed Luther's teachings. With Charles' title and power, he was torn between conflicting demands. As King of Spain, he had to adopt a Spanish viewpoint. As Holy Roman Emperor, he was expected to support German aims. Finally, as the political leader of Christian Europe, Charles had to defend Europe against the Ottoman Turks. Charles ultimately decided that all this was too much for one man to rule, so he stepped down and divided the rule among his son Philip II, who became King of Spain and its colonies, and his brother Ferdinand I, who added Holy Roman Emperor to his title of King of Hungary and Bohemia. Charles's son, Philip II, received Spain and its possessions. His branch of the family became known as the Spanish Habsburgs. From 1560 onwards, William of Orange, Nassau, led the Netherlandish Protestants in their fight for religious freedom from the Catholic rule of the Spanish Habsburgs. William became the father of the nation. This superb portrait, however, shows William at a time when he was still loyal to Emperor Charles V, being already extremely wealthy and commander of his troops. Rise of the Dutch. Under Spanish rule, because Calvinism was becoming popular in the area, Philip treated his Dutch subjects harshly. First, he ignored the Netherlands' long tradition of self-rule. He insisted that he, rather than the local nobles, held all authority. Second, he taxed Dutch trade heavily to pay for Spanish wars. Third, he persecuted the Calvinists. These actions turned the people's distrust of Philip to outright rebellion. Dutch revolt and break from Spain. In 1568, William of Orange led a revolt against Philip. The people of the Calvinist northern provinces lived on land below sea level. Large dikes protected the land. The people opened the dikes, flooding the countryside and leaving Philip's army helpless. William sent small bands of soldiers on quick raids to keep the Spanish army confused. Today, this military technique is called guerrilla warfare. This map shows the Dutch colonial empire. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company was founded. It had total control over trading between the Netherlands and the East Indies. The first Dutch overseas colony was founded on the island of Java in 1619. The Dutch took over the entire island with its valuable crops of sugar, tea, coffee, and spices. From Java, they expanded westward to Sumatra and eastward to the Spice Islands. Their colony at the Cape of Good Hope allowed them to supply and protect their trade routes to Asia. The Dutch also gained a foothold in Japan. Because the Dutch did not come as missionaries, the Japanese allowed them to open a trading center in Nagasaki. In the Western Hemisphere, the Dutch established colonies in the West Indies, South America, and North America. In 1626, they purchased Manhattan Island from the Native Americans and built the city of New Amsterdam there. Today it is New York. The Dutch colonial empire was much different from that of the Spanish. The Dutch never tried to convert conquered peoples to Christianity. They did not force them to speak Dutch or live under laws of the Netherlands. The Dutch came as traders with the sole intention of making money. This goal reflected their businesslike society.